Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Proving Ground, which is episode 13 of season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek as requested by my viewers. This episode was requested by ST Voyager Fan. So Proving Ground was the episode where Shran comes to the Enterprise aid in their attempt to stop the Xindi. They join them in scouting the Xindi as they test their weapon of mass destruction that they plan to use to destroy Earth. They come up with this plan to capture and study the weapon, but Shran, under orders, betrays Archer and steals the weapon. But Archer plans for this and detonates this weapon so neither one of them can use it. So typically I consider this as a passably good episode. I wasn't blown away by it, but I thought it made a nice cog in the machine that is the overall Xindi storyline of Season 3. A lot of episodes earlier in this storyline outright failed, so this episode definitely is above that in that regard. However, it does very little to push the ultimate Xindi storyline forward. However, it will be referenced several times in the future, including the season finale, 0 Hour, that saw the resolution of the Xindi storyline when Shran came to Earth's aid to stop the Xindi from destroying Earth. It's also referenced again in Season 4 when the Vulcan Prime Minister uses the misinformation that the Andorians have the Xindi weapon as an excuse to start a war with them. Ironically, though, in this episode, one of the reasons Shran states for wanting the weapon for Andor is to deter the Vulcans from attacking, but in fact it has the opposite effect, even though they didn't actually have the weapon. But of course, what makes this episode unique in the Season 3 storyline is that it features familiar faces with the reoccurring character of Shran and the reoccurring aliens of the Andorians, whereas typically Season 3 took place in a new uncharted area of space and featuring almost entirely new aliens and new characters. However, I felt the inclusion of the Andorians made perfect sense and was perfectly justified, as it was explained that the Andorians' technology was more advanced than Starfleet, so they could cover the distance that Enterprise did in a much shorter time. Also, the opening scene shows Shran has been searching for the Enterprise for some time before finding it. The only detail I found a bit questionable was the reason Shran gave for finding them, and that is wanting to help them in order to upstage the Vulcans. That did seem like a bit of a weak explanation. However, when it was revealed Shran's real reason for finding them was to steal the Xindi weapon, that made perfect sense and everything fell into place. Now, Shran himself is probably the best recurring character on Enterprise, if not the best, one of the best characters on Enterprise, period, which is another reason why I don't mind his inclusion in the Season 3 Xindi storyline. If anything, he adds to it. As I mentioned in other videos, Jeffrey Combs, in my opinion, is one of the best actors in the Star Trek franchise, mainly for his portrayal of Weyoun on Deep Space Nine, but also for his portrayal of Shran. I mean, Brunt was okay too, I guess, but I feel like Weyoun, Combs really shines when playing this character, and it was a brilliant casting decision. Shran is always interesting as an uneasy ally who can at times be an adversary, and he plays this role perfectly. After all, the first time he met Archer, he bound him and had him beaten, so that's made their growing friendship very interesting. And their relationship is indeed very interesting in this episode, as Shran comes as a friend, but Archer knows him well enough to know there's more to it than that, and prepares for his betrayal. But what's more interesting is the fact that Shran actually does feel a kinship to Archer, and feels really bad about having to betray Archer, which he's under orders to do. And I love the way this was portrayed in this episode, as his commanding officer even questioned him about letting his affection of the humans interfere with his duty to his people. And you can see that it really bothered him to betray his friendship to Archer, but he couldn't betray his duty to his people, which had to be his first priority, and that stays true to his character. And Jeffrey Combs plays the inner conflict absolutely beautifully, and I loved how even after Archer destroyed the weapon, rather than letting him have it, that he still went out of his way to secretly give Archer the schematics of the weapon to help Earth fight off the Xindi. That was a really nice touch. And of course, when Shran comes to Earth's aid in Zero Hour, that also shows how much Shran's friendship with Archer means to him. So it's a very complex and very interesting relationship. And I talked in other videos about the vast differences between Season 3 of Enterprise to the first 2 seasons. And I'm absolutely blown away by the fact that some people actually prefer the first 2 seasons. I don't know, to each their own, I guess. But most people agree with me that Season 3 is far superior. And there are many reasons for that. And this episode comes through by the fact that Archer and Reed actually prepared for Shran to betray them and anticipated it. The Archer and Reed of seasons 1 and 2 were idiots who would have never seen this coming. I particularly loved the portrayal of Reed, how he was very standoffish with the Andorian officer who was assigned to help in the repairs of the Enterprise, but then the two of them learned to trust each other and work together, and they're outright friendly to one another, complimenting each other and whatnot. But of course, the whole time, the Andorian had intended to sabotage the Enterprise sensors and was doing a good job of hiding that from Reed. But what I absolutely loved is that the same time she was being duplicitous, so was Reed, as he was, he was complimenting her and was being nice, but still didn't let that fool him and kept an eye out on her and was able to catch her sabotage. I absolutely love that. And that makes a lot more sense for a trained security officer and third in command of the first ever human starship, that he would be competent enough to not be so easily fooled, which again is different than the Reed of seasons 1 and 2, who would have been easily fooled, which doesn't actually make much sense for a chief of security to be so gullible. Likewise, I like that Archer wasn't such an idiot and knew that Shran had ulterior motives and didn't buy his whole, "oh, we're here to help" routine, as he would have been an idiot to. But again, in seasons 1 and 2, he would have bought this because in those seasons he was an idiot. So one of the things that makes season 3 so much better is that it portrays these highly trained selected members of Starfleet as competent officers, as they should be. However, more than catching Shran's betrayal, I love how Archer had the balls to activate the weapon, which very well could have destroyed Shran's ship, killing hundreds of Andorians. Of course, Archer knew that Shran wouldn't let that happen and would eject the weapon, but still, I doubt that Archer of season 1 and 2 would have been so bold. And this shows in Shran's response to Archer's threat, as he assumes that he wouldn't go through with it, and that's because he's used to dealing with the Archer of seasons 1 and 2. Watching this episode, though, reminds me of the long-term storyline that played out with the Xindi, as we get many scenes with the Xindi Council and its own storyline. And that's another thing I absolutely loved about Season 3, the exploration of these highly complex aliens with fully developed and fleshed out characters, and how they would take time to get their own little storyline without any of the main characters being involved. That being said, sometimes these reptilians could come off as a bit two-dimensional evil. Like, for example, at the time of this episode, all the Xindi are enemies of Earth, but it's obvious that they're playing up the reptilians as the real villains, and Degra as someone who could be reasoned with. But that's alright. Also, I'm reminded on how much better Enterprise was at keeping a sense of continuity, more so than other Star Trek other Star Trek series, particularly Voyager, especially in season 3, as they pay off the earlier episode Shipment, where Archer meets a Xindi named Gaelic, who wasn't aware that his supplies were being used to build a weapon of mass destruction that would be used to destroy a world, and so agreed to sabotage his shipment, and they pay that off by having the weapon test fail because of the sabotage. And I love continuity like that. So my rating for Proving Ground out of 10 is a 7, very good. A very entertaining episode that does a good job at portraying the complex relationship between Archer and Shran, which is one of the stronger aspects of the entire series, which this show takes full advantage of and is able to integrate into the Season 3 Xindi story arc nicely. And I love how it shows the Enterprise crew as being the smart, competent crew that would be able to outsmart Shran, as they should be. However, that being said, this episode doesn't particularly stand out as amazing, as it didn't do much to push the Season 3 storyline forward, but still an entertaining episode to watch that was very well executed. So that's it for my review of Proving Ground. If there's an episode from any of the 5 Star Trek series you'd like me to review, just leave a comment below with the episode you'd like me to review and I'll endeavor to do so. But please, only 1 episode request per person. Also be sure to check out my channel for many more Star Trek reviews, as well as videos on other shows like Game of Thrones, Discovery, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.